Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today's video is going to be on the Doot. The evil, whoops, I should turn that off. Yeah, this card's got quite the reputation, huh? Um, I was recently thinking about the the fact that this is often referred to as the 13th Arcanum, or Arcanum 13. It's the one card that doesn't have a name printed below it out of the major arcana as well as the court cards. There are some interesting ways of writing names. There's one that's written sideways, but nonetheless, this is the only card without a name. And I think that there's a way to interpret this as this card representing like forgetting as the cousin of death. It's been said that there's forgetting, sleep, and death, and these are the three kind of the three states of non-being, right? There's also another interesting saying about how everybody passes away twice. The first time is when our physical bodies cease to live, and the second time is the last time that anyone ever says our name in the world, like the last time we exist as some sort of memory that has up until this point lived on, which is, again, I think kind of I would consider an apt way to approach this card. A lot of people talk about interpreting this as change. I think that's plenty valid, but I want to focus on the forgetting, and especially on the perspective of this, like all the Arcanum being contemplated like a reflection of yourself insofar as you are perceived by someone else out there, right? So it's like a mirror in a way, but you get to see how someone else sees you. And so that theme of forgetting makes me think that someone sees you as having forgotten them, and to a certain degree they feel that like maybe you have forgotten who you were. Like the person that they used to know is no longer there. You are now a machine. You are now in work mode, and you're doing the kind of work that I think often is very interestingly depicted in zombie movies as the work of the undead. It's kind of an interesting thing about the undead in zombie movies, or I would say, this the Grim Reaper would be, I think, a pretty good representation of kind of like an undead archetype. But it's something that simultaneously isn't alive but keeps moving, keeps doing something. And the way almost every single zombie movie portrays zombies is as never ceasing, always quote unquote working, right? They're just like these little wind-up toys. They're these robots. They just keep slowly going and looking for brains. They need the brains, or whatever it is. But they are ceaselessly and mindlessly at work at that task. They never do the kind of things that human consciousness is an inversion of, this kind of mindlessness. They never sacrifice, they never make a trade-off between the present and the future. Zombies are always perpetually in the moment, just carrying out the most basic instructions. There's a couple zombie movies that I can think of that would be an exception to this theme, but it's very rare that a zombie depicts any sort of planning for the future or decides to hide and wait or anything that acknowledges the existence of the future. They're just in the present all the time. And in a way, the Grim Reaper is kind of similar in the sense where he just, in cartoons and whatever, it's like someone dies, the Grim Reaper shows up and takes them away or whatever. It's like he's always there. He always has to show up and do that job. That's his job. He doesn't, and in some stories and cartoons, there's comedic takes on, he's late because he's stuck in traffic. But the reason that joke is hilarious is because it plays off of the expectation of the Grim Reaper is never late. He's always there. And it's like if what the Grim Reaper does could be considered a job, then it's the kind of job that you can't break away from. It's either a very important job or it's a job that, entirely defines you. Like you wouldn't know what to do with yourself if you stopped working, right? It's an obsession one way or another. It's an all-consuming task. And so that's certainly one part of how somebody can think of you as now, and this is regardless of whether you are or not consumed with some sort of, all-consuming task. This is just the way that somebody sees you. Now, sorry, I'm just changing some settings here. Let's have a. Well, I edited all the Casanova cards, so I pixelated them, so they're not as, offensive, I guess is the word. Anyways, so it doesn't matter if you are all consumed with work or not. Very few people are actually, working sunrise to sunset in that fashion. But someone has that impression of you, that you are incredibly busy with your thing, and it makes them second guess any sort of impulse they have to contact you, to hang out, reconnect, plan something. When the idea crosses their mind, the next thing they think is, no, he's doing his thing. He's crazy busy. He's running that company, or he's working on his thing, or whatever, right? Then they choose to not follow up, not pursue any sort of contact. One of the other aspects of this card that I like is the act of mowing this field of limbs and grassy outcroppings, which I think are there mixed intentionally to create the impression that the limbs and heads are growing out of this dark soil the same way as the grass is. Like these are outcroppings of limbs and parts and things, human heads, and the skeleton is just ceaselessly mowing them down. I think this reminds me of something that often either busy people do or not so busy people do, that gives the impression that, again, they're so busy that they can't be bothered. And it's when you try and make contact with someone, you text someone, you get them on the phone, you see them in person, you start chatting with them. Yep. Nothing, just doing stuff. Oh yeah. Those kind of responses. You say, hey man, how's it going? It's been a long time. I just saw this thing, reminded me of that time we went to Vegas. You remember that? That was crazy. Yep. Just chop that whole thing. You were just reaching out. Hey, that memory, the thing. One word answer. Super short. Just, yep. And now some people do this because they are actually crazy busy, and most of us in those situations are correct to think, oh man, she didn't even that was the bare minimum response. Like, seems like she's got a lot on her plate. Okay, we're not going to bother them. But some people also, they just that's how they communicate, not because they're busy. Either they're not picking up on the kind of social cue someone's trying to engage, or they don't know what to say, or there could be a lot of different ways at which a person arrives at the act of those kinds of responses. But I really like the visual idea here of when something that reminds you of a person, comes up from the soil, sort of grows into your life, you're just nip it in the bud, as that saying, impresses upon us the idea that you want to shut something down quickly and early before it grows on to become anything. And again, that's kind of the impression that often people can get that makes them paranoid to continue the conversation. If the first thing you say to them, if your first opening line is met with this yep, it seems like they're trying to nip the conversation in the bud. You think to yourself, or the other people of you are thinking, oh man, they really don't want to even respond to this one, because maybe then they're thinking, then I'll say more shit, then they'll have more shit to respond to, that kind of thing. So now, if people think of you this way, somebody is thinking of you this way, right? Is this something that you want? Because in some cases, this is how you get people to leave you alone. Some people just are very agreeable and maybe a little neurotic, and so it makes them nervous not to do the kind of agreeable things, like politely acknowledging people when they say things. If you want to be left alone and you're not getting that result, it's like that kind of mowing down of anything that even sticks its head up above the soil. That's how you get this kind of reputation. And if in the scenarios where you have this reputation with people and you don't want it, then I think the prescription is to let those things grow, possibly uncontrollably, which in a way could also be another reason for why people cut things down early. Conversations can go in a lot of directions, I guess. There could be a lot of, what if somebody brings up a sore subject, What if somebody mentions a sensitive topic? Who knows where the conversation will go? Maybe that's a reason to chop it down. Now, in all these cases, again, this leads to these people perceiving you as though you have this all-consuming work which is not worth disturbing, and these people will, end up distancing themselves from you. And it leads to this kind of, forgetting. This is one of the ways that people often drift apart over some period of time. And yeah, I think it could be a good exercise when meditating on this card to ask yourself, who in my life, who do I know that is most likely to be thinking of me in this way, as I've become some automata that just works all the time and has no time for anything, and I've forgotten about everyone because I'm so consumed with everything. There's no point in reaching out to me, it would just be an annoyance, right? So I think, one, it's interesting to ask who could be thinking of you in this way, and then also, if if this isn't something that is worth addressing, right? Like, because sometimes all it takes is like, and this is exactly what went through my head, and I found it to be a very useful meditation today on this card, because it, first of all, it reminded me about people that I had forgotten about. It reminded me about people that I have been out of contact with for, a significant enough amount of time, and people also that haven't contacted me. And it's quite possible that the reason that, maybe it's just because they have not thought of me once since this whole amount of time, right? But it could also be because, I came up in their thoughts, but they were like, oh no, he's probably too busy with his things and whatever. But yeah, I think it's a useful direction to aim our attention at. And then when those people come across in your mind, I think it pretty quickly becomes obvious how you feel about where the situation has gotten to. There were a couple people that crossed my mind where I immediately thought, oh, you know what, that's fucked up that I haven't talked to this person. This needs to be remedied immediately. And I took steps to contact these people, and it's great. Back in contact with a couple of people that I kind of, we had forgotten about each other, and then also on a not as serious level, not the total forgetting, but in terms of as a proactive strategy, the regular work of keeping in contact, even in situations where maybe you don't really have anything exciting or terribly relevant to say, but nonetheless, the constant outgrowth of contact and memory and remembering, an individual and acting upon that memory through some sort of contact that's an interesting position to contemplate taking, right? The 13 card, I think, is in a lot of ways related with the number 3 card with the Empress. And I think there's an element to the Empress that involves an almost uncontrolled, unbridled growth. It's like an endlessly supportive mother, which could have its detrimental qualities if you just let your child keep growing and never contain your child's growth in any way, never create any limitations, right? Like that could be a bad thing. But one of the things that I like about the Empress is I like the idea of knowing that someone has an unconditional outpouring, like a constant unconditional outpouring of love or care or attention or good wishes, or like there's a couple of people that I keep in touch with every day. It's generally family members, and it's just to reach out and like literally, like I have like every day there's a text message to a couple people that just says like, hey, or often it's just healthy exclamation mark. That's it. Just to let family members that care about me, and probably parents worry about their kids, stuff like that, want to make sure you're doing good. Just those types of, even if it's boring, it's just like the grass growing. It just every day just grows a little bit. That little bit isn't really that exciting. It's not that spectacular, but it reminds you that it is growing. It reminds you that it is alive, right? That relationship is alive. So yeah, there's some hopefully fun stuff to meditate on and consider. That's going to be it for me today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Drop me a like or a comment. Also, I invite you to comment free reading for your chance to win a free one-on-one reading. I'll be back with another video tomorrow. I'll talk to you then. Take care.